My mother's voice was casual when she told me they'd already gone to Hawaii. The trip I'd paid $22,000 for. "Oh, we went last week," she said. "Only for family." The phone almost slipped from my hand. Only for family. Like I was some distant acquaintance. Some stranger who'd sent them a gift card out of politeness. I stood there in my Buffalo apartment, staring at the frozen street below, and something inside me went cold. Not sad. Not angry yet. Just cold. Because I drained my savings trying to hold these people together after my divorce, and somehow I was the one who got erased. That night, I didn't cry. I poured myself a drink and made a decision. If they thought they could use me like an ATM and then toss me aside, they were about to learn what family really costs. Let me back up. After my divorce, I kept telling myself that family would be my anchor. When everything else collapsed, my marriage, my sense of direction, the house that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else, I thought going home would fix it. Make me feel whole again. Instead, it made me smaller. I rented this one-bedroom place in Buffalo. The kind with old radiators that hiss through the night and windows that rattle when the wind picks up. My job in finance kept me busy enough to forget during the day, but at night, the silence was brutal. So I did what I knew best. I threw money at the problem. Every time my mom called about a tight month, I covered it. When Dad's car broke down, I paid the repair shop over the phone without even asking what was wrong. My sister Alyssa, she never called unless she needed something. Rent. Utilities. A new laptop for her online courses. I never questioned it. I just wired the money and told myself this was love. Over 2 years, it became routine. Rent here, bills there, groceries, car insurance. The quiet kind of giving that drains you so slowly you don't even notice until you're empty. I told my therapist I couldn't afford sessions anymore. But the truth? I felt guilty spending money on myself when my family needed it. I actually started keeping a spreadsheet of their expenses. Labeled everything neatly, like organization could make it feel less pathetic. Looking back now, I can see how pathetic it was. Every Friday, I'd update that spreadsheet. Highlight the cells in green when payments went through. Like I was tracking my worth. Like if I gave enough, they'd finally see me as someone who mattered. My coworker Nicole noticed something was off. We were in the break room one afternoon when she asked if I wanted to grab dinner after work. "Can't," I told her. "My sister needs help with rent this month." Nicole looked at me for a long moment. "Eve, when was the last time you did something for yourself?" I couldn't answer. Because I genuinely couldn't remember. The Hawaii trip was supposed to be different. When I first suggested it, Mom sounded delighted. "We all need a reset," she'd said. And I believed her. I imagined us on the beach, sunlight on our faces, laughing the way we hadn't in years. It felt like redemption. Like maybe if I could give them this perfect vacation, they'd finally see me as more than the daughter who failed at marriage. I spent weeks planning every detail. Read reviews for hours. Made spreadsheets comparing hotels, yes, another spreadsheet. I chose one with ocean views and breakfast included. Booked snorkeling tours, nice dinners at restaurants that required reservations months in advance, airport transfers in a luxury van. Every detail perfect. I remember calling the hotel concierge to arrange a surprise champagne welcome. "It's for my family," I told him. "We haven't been together in a while." "That's beautiful," he said. "They're lucky to have you." I held on to those words like a lifeline. The night I booked the flights, I sat at my desk staring at the confirmation email glowing on my screen. My reflection in the window looked tired but hopeful. $22,000. Nearly every cent I'd saved since the divorce. My finger hovered over the confirm purchase button for a full minute. That was my emergency fund. My safety net. The money that was supposed to protect me if something went wrong. But I clicked it anyway. Because this was my family. And family was supposed to be the one thing you could count on. The next morning, Mom texted back, "Got it." I stared at that heart emoji for longer than I want to admit. Screenshotted it, even. Saved it to my phone like proof that I mattered. I didn't realize it would be the last time she'd make me feel like I did. Because here's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't come all at once. It builds quietly. One payment, one favor, one unanswered thank you at a time. Until one day you wake up and realize you've been erased. That Saturday morning when Mom called, I was genuinely excited. I'd taken the day off work specifically to finalize the last details. I had a whole list ready. Questions about dietary restrictions for the restaurants, whether Dad still needed his motion sickness medication, if Alyssa wanted the couple's massage I'd been thinking about adding. Hey Mom, how's the Hawaii planning going? That pause. God, that pause. Oh, we already went last week. Only for family. I laughed. Because surely she was joking. What do you mean you already went? I booked those tickets. All 4 of them. Yes, you did. Her voice was so smooth. So matter of fact. It was lovely, Evelyn. We just needed some time together. You've been so busy with work. Busy with work. Like I was some absent executive who'd forgotten a business meeting. Not the daughter who'd spent months planning this trip. Who'd given up her savings to make it happen. Mom, I was supposed to go too. That was the whole point. She sighed. Like I was being difficult. Well, it just worked out this way. Alyssa's boyfriend had the week off, and you know how hard it is to coordinate schedules. We thought you'd understand. Alyssa's boyfriend. They'd taken Alyssa's boyfriend on the trip I paid for. But not me. I could hear the ocean in the background. Wind. Laughter. The distant cry of seagulls. They were calling me from paradise. The paradise I'd given them. Are you still there? Mom asked. Yeah, I said. My voice sounded hollow. I'm here. Good. Listen, I have to go. We're about to head to dinner. That restaurant you booked is absolutely gorgeous. Thank you for that, sweetie. Thank you for that. Like I'd sent them a gift basket. Then she hung up. The coffee mug slipped from my hand and shattered against the counter. Coffee bled down the white cabinets, pooling on the floor. I just stood there, watching it spread, listening to the radiator hiss like it was mocking me. Only for family. I didn't clean up the coffee. I sat on the floor with my back against the cabinet and pulled out my phone. Opened Instagram. And there they were. Photos. Dozens of them. Mom and Dad on the beach, drinks in hand. Alyssa and her boyfriend snorkeling in water so blue it looked fake. All of them at dinner, toasting the camera with the champagne I'd arranged. The caption on Alyssa's post read, "Best family vacation ever." Sometimes you just need quality time with the people who matter most. Hashtag blessed, hashtag family first, hashtag Hawaii. The people who matter most. I sat there on my kitchen floor, surrounded by broken ceramic and spilled coffee, scrolling through pictures of my family having the time of their lives on the trip I'd paid for. And that's when something inside me broke. Not my heart. That had been breaking slowly for 2 years. No, what broke was the part of me that kept making excuses for them. The part that kept saying they didn't mean it, they just forgot, they were going through a hard time. That part shattered just like the coffee mug. I spent the rest of that day trying to convince myself I'd misunderstood. Maybe there was a mix-up. Maybe they'd planned a surprise for me too. Maybe they'd call tomorrow and apologize, say it was all a terrible mistake. But when I checked the email receipts, I saw it clearly. The booking had been changed. My name removed. Alyssa's boyfriend's name added. The change had been made 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. They'd known for 3 weeks they were cutting me out, and no one said a word. The next few days blurred together. I went to work, smiled through meetings, approved budgets, gave presentations. But inside, something was unraveling. Every transfer I'd ever made to them flashed through my mind like a ledger of humiliation. I started adding it up. Really adding it up, beyond the spreadsheet. 2 years of rent for Alyssa. $18,000. Car repairs, insurance, and payments for Dad. $12,000. Mom's credit card debt that I'd paid off. $8,000. Groceries, utilities, random emergencies. Another $15,000 at least. $53,000. In 2 years. And that was just what I could easily track. There were cash handouts I'd never recorded. Dinners I'd paid for. Gifts for birthdays and holidays that were never reciprocated. I'd given them everything. And they'd given me nothing. Not even a phone call to say I wasn't invited to the trip I'd bought. One night, I found an old photo from Thanksgiving. Before the divorce. Mom and Dad stood in the center, Alyssa next to them, arms linked. I was off to the side, holding the camera remote, half cut from the frame. I hadn't noticed it then. But now it felt like a prophecy. I'd always been on the outside. I'd just been too desperate to see it. That night, sitting in the dark with my phone face down beside me, I realized something I should have known years ago. Love that has to be purchased isn't love. It's a transaction. And like every transaction, there comes a point when the account runs out. The next time they called, I didn't answer. Not yet. A month passed. Snow turned to gray slush. The city felt like it was holding its breath, and so was I. I watched my phone ring. Mom's name. Dad's name. Alyssa's name. Over and over. I'd stare at it, let it go to voicemail, then delete the message without listening. Nicole from work asked if I was okay. You seem different, she said. I'm fine, I told her. Just figuring some things out. Then one evening, while I was working on reports at my kitchen table, my phone buzzed. Alyssa's name lit up the screen. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Hey Eve, she said, voice syrupy sweet. Listen, rent's overdue again. Landlord's been on my back. Can you send $2,000? Just until next week. I stared at the numbers on my laptop screen. $2,000. My mind went back to the beach. To her smiling somewhere in Hawaii. The trip I'd paid for. The trip I wasn't invited to. The boyfriend who took my place. Only for family, remember? I said softly. What? The sweetness cracked. You heard me. The silence was thick and ugly. Then she laughed. Sharp. Fake. Don't be ridiculous, Evelyn. You're family. You've always helped us. Not anymore. I ended the call before she could argue. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From something colder. Cleaner. Relief. I opened my banking app and scrolled to the automatic payments I'd set up years ago. Rent transfers. Car insurance. Phone bills. Internet. Even their streaming services, I'd been paying for their Netflix and Spotify. My fingers hovered over each one. Then I started tapping. Cancel. 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 Each confirmation felt like a door closing. And it felt good. When I was done, I called my financial advisor. I want to secure my accounts completely, I told her. New passwords, two-factor verification, everything. And I need to make sure no one else can access my accounts or request transfers. She didn't ask why. Maybe she heard it in my voice. The next morning, I drove to the bank and signed all the forms. My advisor slid them back to me, nodding. You're taking control, she said quietly. I smiled. Finally. That afternoon, I called a locksmith. Can you install new locks and a camera system? By evening, Carl the technician was at my door. Big guy with steady hands who didn't ask questions. He replaced the old brass lock with a heavy deadbolt, mounted a camera above the frame, and showed me the app to monitor it. When he left, I stood by the door watching the feed on my phone. That blinking red light stared back at me, steady and unbothered. For the first time in years, my apartment felt like mine. Not a temporary stop between their crises. Not a place I crashed between wire transfers. Mine. It didn't take long. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. 3 sharp buzzes that cut through the quiet. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone. There they were. Mom in her thick fur coat, arms crossed like she was about to fire someone. Dad beside her, shoulders slumped, eyes darting everywhere but the camera. Alyssa in front, lip gloss shining, phone in hand, pretending this wasn't humiliating. And next to her, a man in a gray suit clutching a briefcase. I didn't even need to hear him speak to know who he was. A lawyer. They'd brought a lawyer to my door. I took a slow breath, walked to the door, and opened it just enough to show my face. Evelyn. Mom said it like a command. We need to talk. I'm listening. The man in the suit stepped forward. Ms. Adams, I'm representing your parents and sister. They're concerned about your recent financial decisions. They've asked me to mediate before this escalates. Escalates? I leaned against the doorframe. You mean before you drag me to court for cutting off your allowance? His jaw tightened. They feel your choices are erratic, potentially unstable. Alyssa scoffed behind him. We just want to help, Eve. You've been through a lot. The divorce, living alone. We're worried about you. My laugh was short. Bitter. Help. You went on a trip I paid for and didn't even tell me. Took Alyssa's boyfriend instead. You don't want to help. You want control. You want the money back. Watch your tone, Mom snapped. We're family, right? I met her eyes. Only for family. Wasn't that what you said? Her face twitched, but she stayed quiet. Dad finally spoke, voice low. Evelyn, be reasonable. You know we depend on you. I looked at him. This man who used to teach me how to balance a checkbook. Who once told me independence was everything. Who used to say never let anyone make you feel small. They're grown adults, Dad. They can depend on themselves. Like you taught me to. The lawyer cleared his throat. If you refuse to continue support, we'll have to file for guardianship. To protect your assets. And theirs. It's not uncommon in cases like this. Guardianship. That word hit me like ice water. They weren't just trying to guilt me. They were trying to own me. To legally control my money. To make sure I could never say no again. I straightened, meeting the lawyer's eyes. Then I'll see you in court. And I shut the door in their faces. For a long time, I stood there breathing hard, listening to their muffled voices through the door. I let them shout. Let them threaten. Let them bang on the door. I didn't open it. When the noise finally faded, I poured another glass of wine, sat by the window, and let the city's hum fill the space they'd once occupied. A week later, the letter arrived. Official courthouse stationery. Thick envelope. Petition for guardianship filed by Abigail, Dennis, and Alyssa Adams. Reason: concerns over Evelyn Adams' emotional stability and financial judgment following divorce. Petitioners request court-appointed oversight of respondents' financial affairs to prevent self-harm through financial mismanagement. Self-harm through financial mismanagement. They'd made me sound suicidal. It was absurd. It was cruel. It was exactly what they do. I called my friend Iris immediately. She didn't sound surprised. They're trying to break you, Eve. Make you think you're crazy so you'll give in. You need a lawyer. A good one. She gave me a name. Andrew Garrison. A man she'd worked with when her own brother tried to sue her over inheritance money. He doesn't scare easy, she added. And he doesn't lose. The next morning, I met Andrew in his office downtown. Quiet man in his 50s with calm eyes and a voice that carried weight. His office was neat but not fancy. Family photos on the desk. Law books lining the walls. After I explained everything, and I mean everything, from the first payment to the Hawaii trip to the guardianship petition, he leaned back, fingers steepled. What they're doing is financial abuse, he said flatly. And now they're attempting legal coercion. But we'll need to prove your competence in every way possible. They're going to paint you as unstable. We need to show you're anything but. Fine, I said. Tell me what to do. He listed everything. Employment records showing consistent work history. Bank statements proving responsible financial management. Evaluations from my doctor. Letters from my therapist. Character references from colleagues and friends. If they're going to paint you as unstable, we'll show them the opposite. We'll show them a woman who finally got smart enough to say no. For the first time in months, I felt steady. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. 2 weeks later, I walked into the courthouse. The cold marble floors echoed under my heels. My hands were trembling, but my chin was high. Andrew walked beside me, briefcase in hand, calm as ever. Mom, Dad, and Alyssa sat at the opposite table, whispering to each other. Alyssa wore a black blazer, trying too hard to look professional. Mom's eyes met mine, no warmth. Only challenge. Only anger that I'd dared to say no. Their lawyer stood to speak first. Your Honor, Ms. Adams has exhibited clear signs of instability. Following her divorce, she's displayed erratic financial behavior, cutting off support to her family without warning or reason. She's isolated herself, refused communication, and shown concerning judgment. Her family believes she is unfit to manage her affairs and requests the court appoint oversight to protect her from further self-destructive decisions. I could almost laugh. They'd built a fantasy version of me. A woman falling apart. A woman who needed to be saved from herself. Andrew rose calmly. Your Honor, what you'll see today is not instability, but independence. My client is a successful financial manager with a decade of consistent employment, excellent performance reviews, and zero disciplinary actions. She has no debt, no erratic spending, no history of mental instability. Her accounts are in excellent order. The only thing she's guilty of is saying no to people who've been taking advantage of her for years. He handed over the thick folder we'd prepared. Pay stubs. Performance reviews. Bank statements showing responsible management. Doctor's evaluation. Therapist's letter. Character references from 3 colleagues and 2 friends. Mom looked away. Alyssa rolled her eyes like this was all so dramatic. When the judge called me to the stand, my pulse quickened. I took the oath, sat down, and met his gaze. Ms. Adams, he said, in your own words, why did you cut off financial support to your family? I took a breath, because I realized I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was their bank account. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I supported them for 2 years after my divorce. Rent, bills, groceries, car repairs, insurance. I even paid $22,000 for a family vacation to Hawaii, thinking it would bring us closer together. But when I called my mother to ask about the planning, she told me they'd already gone. That it was only for family. Like I wasn't family. Like I was just the person who paid for things. The judge raised an eyebrow. And you weren't invited to this trip? No, Your Honor. I wasn't even told they were going. They took my sister's boyfriend instead. I found out from a phone call after they'd already left. I saw the photos on Instagram. Andrew stepped forward. And after that revelation, my client made the healthy decision to stop the financial support. 1 month later, her sister called asking for $2,000 in rent. My client responded with the same words her mother had used, only for family, remember? Gasps scattered through the benches behind me. Mom's face flushed red. Alyssa's jaw tightened, and she whispered something to their lawyer. The judge leaned back, expression unreadable. Andrew handed over the final document. An evaluation from my doctor dated just 1 week ago, confirming I was mentally and emotionally fit, with no signs of depression, instability, or impaired judgment. Your Honor, the only instability here is the family's financial dependence on my client. They've built their lifestyle around her generosity, and now that she's chosen to prioritize her own well-being, they're attempting to use the legal system to force her compliance. This isn't guardianship. This is financial coercion. The other lawyer tried to object, but his voice sounded thin now. Desperate. Your Honor, we simply want what's best for Ms. Adams. What's best for my client, Andrew interrupted, is freedom from manipulation. After a pause that felt like hours, the judge spoke. The court finds no evidence of incapacity, mental instability, or impaired judgment. Ms. Adams is clearly competent to manage her own affairs. Petition denied. Case dismissed. Just like that. I didn't smile. Not yet. I just exhaled, the sound trembling out of me like I'd been holding my breath for 2 years. Mom stood slowly, gripping her purse like a lifeline. Alyssa looked like she might cry, though I couldn't tell if it was from shame or rage. Dad avoided my eyes entirely, staring at the floor like he couldn't bear to face what they'd tried to do. As they gathered their papers, I turned toward them one last time. You wanted control, I said quietly. Now you have none. Then I walked out. Outside, the cold air hit me like a baptism. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying anyone's weight but my own. 3 months after the trial, Buffalo finally thawed. The snow melted into quiet streams along the sidewalks. And for the first time in years, the city didn't feel like a cage. I moved into a new apartment. Smaller, but bright. Wide windows that let the afternoon light spill across the floor. No old radiators that hissed at night. No broken memories clinging to the walls. The silence here was different. Peaceful. Earned. I spent my mornings making coffee without checking my phone for payment requests or guilt trip messages. My evenings were filled with small joys. Reading books I'd put off for years. Long walks through the park. A beginner's cooking class at the community center where nobody knew my story. The first time I made pasta from scratch, the dough tore apart in my hands. But I laughed anyway. The instructor, an older woman named Maria, smiled at me. That's how we learn, she said. By making a mess first. It wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about starting over. About building something new from scratch, even if it fell apart the first time. Iris and my book club friends visited one weekend, bringing wine and more warmth than I'd felt in years. We sat on my new couch, the first piece of furniture I'd bought for myself in years, and talked about everything except my family. As we toasted, Ruth said, "You look lighter, Eve. Like you're actually here with us now." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "Like I can finally breathe." Later that night, alone again, I wrote a single line in my journal. Freedom isn't revenge. It's reclaiming what they took from you. Through a mutual friend, I heard Alyssa was working double shifts at a diner to cover her bills. My parents had moved to a smaller place across town, a 1-bedroom apartment they split the rent on. Dad had taken a part-time job at Home Depot. I didn't feel satisfaction. Just closure. They were finally living their own lives. And I was living mine. I stood by my window, watching the city glow in the soft spring dusk, and whispered to myself, "Only for family." This time, it wasn't pain. It was peace. For years, I'd mistaken sacrifice for love, silence for peace, exhaustion for loyalty. But losing everything taught me something simple. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by respect, by reciprocity, by people who see you as more than what you can give them. They said, "Only for family." And I learned that real family doesn't demand your wallet to prove your worth. Real family doesn't erase you from trips you paid for. Real family doesn't threaten you with legal action when you finally say no. So I kept my boundaries, my freedom, and my name. The city lights flickered like quiet promises outside my window. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally home. Not in Buffalo, but in myself. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with others, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about finding strength when the people who should love you choose money over family. Sometimes the family you choose is the one you create by walking away.